There's also the question of need. What do you need the money? If you're Haddad's son, you probably don't need the money, right?
Yeah, of course.
If you're, I think everybody in this room, or most normal people, can typically need some amount of funding and things like that. Okay. So for Stanford engineering, this is the example I was talking about. Financial aid is entirely based on merit. Fellowships and other forms of assistantships are included in the department's offer of admissions, and no separate application. I pulled this right from their website. So no separate application is required or accepted. The university supports 180 engineering graduate financial aid funds. Aid reported by institution, but it's this last column that's my favorite. And that's the maximum aid reported by individual advisors. So if a school has $40,000 in tuition, and the average aid amount is $22,000, that's the average. My question is, do they offer a full tuition scholarship? From here you can see what's the maximum amount a student's gotten. And I say it right here on the last slide. If somebody else has done it, you can do it too. Okay? So it lets you know that it's possible. School is willing to offer this amount of money. I've used this tool to search out, especially, what's that phrase right there? Can anybody read that?
To
full tuition. What do you think that means?
Full tuition?
Halas. That means all your tuition, right? Yeah. So, Albion College gave somebody from Russia and Mongolia $38,700, which covered all of the cost of the tuition, and then they only had to cover the remaining cost in other expenses. Okay? Make sense? So using Excel, you can sort this document, and in fact, I did it for two. Yeah.
Where is this tool available?
Huh?
Where is this tool available? This tool, where is it available?
I'm going to email it to you directly, because this isn't publicly available on the internet. That's why I asked you not to email it to anybody. It's done by us. So each of the education advisors in the country that works with students, so the 18,000 at Gwendolyn Mercy should be incorporated into this. The 12,000 at Temple should be incorporated into this. We report this ourselves, our whole network. And then we compile, there's a woman in Africa that compiles it all together. She's very nice. And from there, we then share this with you to help guide your studies. So you can use this to sort for phrases like full tuition. And from there, you can identify schools that offer the very best financial aid opportunities. So we had two young girls that we were trying to help get into college. And we asked them, we use this tool to target undergraduate schools for them to apply to. The letters over here, BC, C, and C, these stand for different levels of competitiveness. Very competitive, not competitive, very competitive plus, all the way up to highly competitive. What do you think Harvard is? Highly competitive plus. Highly competitive plus, yes. Okay. Any questions about this sheet? So as you go through, yes?
So include the insurance.
For the average cost, it will be included in that. For the full tuition and things like that, it's just going to cover the tuition. It's not going to cover things like the health insurance, your room and board, and your plane tickets and things like that. Okay, that's a good question. There may be 1,700 schools. There may be some schools that have scholarships that can help cover some of the room and board and other expenses. They would be relatively rare, though. Okay, I wouldn't say it could never happen, but they would be relatively rare. So, our final thought is opportunity. There's some challenges here. It can be difficult to get full funding from a scholarship. Scholarships can vary even more than schools, right? And that can be really frustrating too. You thought it was tough researching schools, now you have to go out and research scholarships too. But there is an opportunity for everybody, and there is a different path. Maybe that means even though I have a licence, I want to go back and get an undergraduate degree because there's better financial aid opportunities available. Maybe that means going through a community college with a much lower tuition rate. Maybe that means applying to the Fulbright or one of our embassy exchange programs. Ilham went on one of our embassy exchange programs. You went on a SUSI, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So how long were you in the United States for?
For 5 weeks.
For 5 weeks. Mm-hmm. We also have longer ones like the FLTA. Mm-hmm. That is up to a year. than ECU grad, which is half a year. So there's other ways to get experience in the United States, to get training, to get knowledge. We'll also mention at the very end, there's also free, many universities offer free online classes that won't help you earn a degree. They're called MOOCs, Massive Online Open Courses, but they do give you knowledge, and they're a good way to try to improve yourself personally. For homework, I want you to keep researching schools, keep looking out for schools, and then try to identify one scholarship opportunity by clicking through some of the links. My final thought to you is visualize your path to success. Figure out start with your end goal in mind. Where do I want to be? And then work your way backwards through each of the steps and determine how you can get there, right? There can be many different paths to take, and there may be opportunities that you're not yet aware of. But always keep that in mind, okay? Does anybody have any questions?
I'd like to ask about the job opportunities in the school, in the university.
That's a good question for funding. So, on an F-student visa, you can work up to 20 hours a week at on-campus jobs. Not every school will have jobs available on campus. Many will. As you research a school or reach out to a school, you should ask them about that. These jobs can help you pay for some of your living expenses while you're on school. You can also earn money that you can then save up and maybe apply towards future study. Jobs are typically low paying by US standards, anywhere from $8 to $12 an hour, depending on what you might be doing. The other thing to remember is that you can't go and then work and then go back and pay for your studies. So whatever you've earned, whatever you need to show for that I-20, whatever you need to show for that admissions purposes needs to be funding that you already have on hand. It can't be future funding, okay? Does that make sense?
Who will go first, the scholarship or application for education?
What should go first? You should be applying to both at the same time. The most common thing is that you either submit it most are through universities. And the most common theme is that you either at the same time you submit your application to the university, you also submit that application to the scholarship, or your application to the scholarship is part of your application to the university. Okay? Does that make sense?
Joe, I searched on the Google and I found a lot of opportunities. A lot of foundations offer opportunities to provide money to fund your studies. So you have to get admitted to certain university and then you got a scholarship from that.
Right, and that's what I was going to say. For the foundations, once you're accepted into the school, then you work to fund. Because remember, you don't actually enroll. Once you're accepted in the spring, you don't actually enroll to the fall. So you have times there. Most foundation amounts, though, and did you see this too, where they tend to be smaller amounts? They tend to be $1,000, $2,000, $5,000.
But Joe, excuse me, do we need the I-20 to get admitted?
No.
Don't need that.
The I-20 is what's given to you after you're admitted.
After?
Yes, so they send that to you then.
About when you have a homestay, host family, not on campus.
So host families can happen for ESL, typically for a longer range graduate study. Universities won't place you with a host family. There may be a company that you could work with in the local area that might place you with a host family that would allow you to rent a room for that. But typically universities for degree study, they're not going to place you with a host family.
And about the cost cheaper than?
It can depend. Yeah, host families, I mean, any place where you're sharing housing tends to lower cost. So, you may live with 3 roommates. I wouldn't count necessarily on getting a place to yourself. Okay? Any other questions? Okay. All right, I'm going to go hit stop recording on this. And more than 65 graduate fellowships. Many types of fellowships are available, including particular areas of studies. Some of our most successful international graduates have chosen to fund fellowships from their homeland, including programs from Mexico, China, Taiwan, and the Middle East. So while there is no Algeria scholarship program, there are a few that are for Middle Eastern students abroad as a whole. So where's this money available? So need blind admissions and full admissions met. Need blind admissions means that when the school considers your application, they are blind to the amount of funds that they need. This is most schools. However, there are a few schools that when they look at international students are also considering what is the amount that the student is able to contribute to their funding, and that factors into their admissions decision. There's often standard amounts of funding based on a scholarship, but other times you will see a range. So if the range is $2,000 to $18,000, what that means is more merit is required for $18,000 than is required for $2,000. This makes sense, right? Remember, colleges are competing for you. So you actually can negotiate a little bit. So I mentioned that student that got $12,000 from Temple and $18,000 from Gwendolyn Mercy. Which do you think she took, Gwendolyn Mercy or Temple?
Temple. Because she has her anchor.
Okay, well you know the answer, else it's cheating. You would think it would be $18,000, right? But in the case of Gwendolyn Mercy had a much higher tuition rate. So the $18,000, it was actually more expensive to go there, even though they offered more financial aid. That's why more expensive schools tend to offer more financial aid. They know this. So we went back to Gwendolyn Mercy and we said, look, we really like you, we want to go to you. And we have a scholarship offer from Temple. Is there any way you can increase your amount of financial aid that you offer? And many times the university will come back and say, yes, we can increase the amount that we're able to offer. Ask for what you need, not for what you want, because your ultimate goal is to study. But you can negotiate, and sometimes universities, especially for really successful and deserving students, will increase their financial aid opportunities. It's also something that schools that recognize, schools that are not as highly ranked, recognize that in order to attract top tier students, they need to offer financial incentives to do this. So my roommate, my first year at William & Mary, he was offered a full ride, full scholarship, all tuition to Arizona State University. He chose to go to William & Mary because it was a better school and he was able to afford it. But William & Mary's 31st and Arizona State's 331. So they knew that to attract a really top tier candidate, they needed to financially incentivize him a little bit. Okay, does that make sense? So if you have really good academic records,